Senior Lecturer at Keele University. Thank you so much for joining us on the program. Now, when I opened the draft, I directly went to the implementation section because it's great that all these countries are making several pledges to combat the climate crisis. But when it comes down to enforcing regulations to cause real change, that's the bigger issue here, isn't it?
It is. It's one thing to have a target, but to make those, to bring in down emissions to levels that we need things to actually happen. And putting that detail in place has been a little bit more tricky, especially with things as complex as transport. So, transport is essential. It's an essential part of trade, and it's an essential part of different operations within a country. And to decarbonise that, and it represents 10% of global emissions, is incredibly difficult, but there are different ways that the plan looks to address this. So so this is how this hopefully will take this forward.
Right, and without the finances, little can be done. I just want to read Article 23 in the draft, and it goes as follows. Notes with regret that the goal of developed country parties to mobilize jointly $100 billion per year by 2020 in the context of meaningful mitigation actions and transparency on implementation has not yet been met. Will we witness developed countries step up to the plate now?
I think we will. We are seeing a lot more R&D in terms of different mechanisms to make this transition. So we've seen a great advance in things like electric vehicles and batteries that will help with this transition to zero carbon vehicles. We're seeing advances, especially in things like hydrogen. So I think we will see a rollout, and there's a massive acceleration in the R&D that will underpin a lot of the fuel for this sector as it transitions away. And I think there's targets. It's not, it doesn't have to be done overnight. And I think the plan for a timeline for this transition is, it is realistic. And there's also, it's also written into the plan that all nations will be assisted in this transition. So I think that there's a real will, this time round, to bring everybody forward with the same goals, and for those nations with the technology to help other nations catch up.
Right. It's interesting you mention that, because Bill Hare, who is the CEO of an organization called Climate Analytics, said that the pledges so far made at COP26 are quite inadequate, and considering only those targets for 2030 would limit global warming to 2.4 degrees Celsius. How should we, the people, be prepared to take on the climate crisis, given that we've already seen the effects of it today, and it's only going to get worse?
It is, and it's quite right. Even if all the pledges are put in place, we're looking at something like a rise of 2.4, which is it's a degree difference. This is to what we intended to stay behind, and that has massive implications for the number of people that are affected. That doesn't sound like a lot in temperature, but for every degree in rise, we're looking at the air can hold, sort of up to 7% more humidity. This drives more storms. It drives more chaos in our weather systems and more natural disasters. So the amount of people that are going to be affected just by that missing that target is potentially millions of people. And the urgency in us getting behind these impacts, and it can be quite difficult for people to imagine that the way that we engage with transport has an impact across the world. Mm-hmm. In terms of things like droughts and fires. It can seem intangible, but it really isn't. And the urgency, I think, is being seen in these plans, and we
Right.
do have some tangible ways to move forward.
All right, Sharon George, thank you so much for joining us on the NewsHour.